विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So children, you wanted again me to tell you the 4 types of bhaktas, what we saw in the 7th chapter, correct? There, Bhagavan says, there are 4 types of bhaktas. Bhakta means what? The one who loves God, the one who surrenders to God, the one who goes to God and asks for help. Goes to means what? Asks God for help. He is called as a bhakta. Now, there are 4 types of bhaktas. Who are they? First one is called as the Artha Bhakta. Artha Bhakta andreno, whenever there is a distress, whenever he is in distress, Kashta Bandaga, in distress, he thinks of God. Otherwise, he may not think of God. He thinks of God and asks him and prays to him and cries for help. He is an Artha Bhakta. Artharthi Bhakta is the one who he has something to do. He wants to do something. He wants to attain something, he wants to achieve something, and he knows that unless God's grace is there, it is not possible for me to be successful in whatever I am going to do. Therefore, what does he do? He prays to Bhagwan, he prays to God and says, hey Devre, please help me in my venture. Please see that I become successful. He is called as an Artharthi Bhakta. Then, there is a third one who Bhagwan likes very much. What does he say? He says that Artha Bhakta and Artharthi Bhakta are using me as a means. For what? To gain their personal benefits. They want to get some personal results for themselves. After they get their results, they are not much bothered about me. They forget me. Correct? Whereas Jignasu Bhakta is the one who always remembers me. He wants to know me. He wants to understand what I am. He wants to understand my para-prakriti, my apara-prakriti. He wants to know what is this God, what is this universe, what is the connection, relationship between God and the universe. All these things he wants to know. He is called as a Jignasu Bhakta. And a person who, after being a Jignasu Bhakta, after knowing God, he has learned fully whatever Bhagavan has taught in, Bhagavad Gita, whatever he taught Arjuna, he knows it correctly. He has understood what our scriptures are talking about, what our Upanishads are talking about. And such a person who has this knowledge fully is called as a Jnani Bhakta. And Bhagwan said, Jnani Bhakta is my favorite because he is me only. He is my Atma only. He is my Atma and I am his Atma. Therefore, Jnani Bhakta is the dearest to me. But all the other 3 are also very, very important to me because they have come to me and asked for help. Okay. Now, with that, we completed the 7th chapter. Now we'll go to the 8th chapter. 8th chapter, you have to understand, children, that this is a very, very difficult chapter, and Lord Krishna talks about lot of definitions of words that are given in our scriptures. In our Vedas, lot of important words are given, and Bhagwan wants to discuss the meaning of all those words. But then you people, the children, at this stage, it is not important for you to understand the meaning of all these are all what you call as the now when we want to learn physics, there are some jargons, no, there are some words in physics, there are some words in science which you should know to understand what that particular thing. Now supposing you are studying physics, you have to know what is the meaning of energy, what is the meaning of speed, what is the meaning of acceleration, what is the meaning of amplitude. All these are the words that are there, correct? So when you learn a subject, you have to know certain words which without knowing those words, you cannot understand what is told. Now, Lord Krishna wants to give Arjuna. Arjuna has also heard these words before. What are the words? There are some words which Arjuna talks about, and he wants to know the meaning of those words as it is given in our Shastra, as it is given in our scriptures. But then at present, it is not very relevant to us. So what we'll do is, we will take up only that portion of the 8th chapter where Lord Krishna talks about how important it is to remember Lord Krishna or Bhagwan or God all through one's life. We have already seen what we have seen. There is a karma yogi who remembers God, offers all his actions to God with the arpana buddhi, and he accepts whatever comes as God's prasada. Correct? Then we have seen that there is a bhakta who is meditating upon God. He is called as an upasaka or a meditator on God. Correct? And then we also saw that there is a jignasu bhakta who wants to know what is the reality of God, what is the nature of God. Is God different from me? Is God different to different jivas, or is God same to all the jivas? Is God the Atma? What is Atma of God? What is individual jiva's Atma? All these questions will be answered by our Shastra, our Vedas, our Upanishads. They will be answered to a Jignasu Bhakta. And to learn this, what does he do? He goes to a teacher. He goes to a teacher and asks for this knowledge. Just like Arjuna surrendered to God, to Lord Krishna, and asked for this knowledge. And what is Bhagavan doing? Krishna is teaching whatever is taught in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. That is why what is Bhagavad Gita called? Sarvopanishad. Upanishads, all the Upanishads put together, Krishna is giving the milk of all the Upanishads. Sarvopanishado gavo dogda gopala nandana. We saw that in the Dhyana shloka, correct? So what is Lord Krishna doing? He is culling out. He is taking the summary of all the Vedas and Vedanta, our Shastra, and giving it in the form of Bhagavad Gita. The one who knows all these things is called as a Jnani Bhakta. Now, in the 8th chapter, what is it that Bhagwan wants Arjuna to know most important? There are many topics discussed in the 8th chapter. Many topics are discussed. One is the meaning of many words which are given in the, in our scriptures, like adhidaivam, adhibhutam, adhyatmam, adhiyagnyam, okay, Brahma, karma, all these words which Arjuna wants to know the meaning of them. But right now, we will not, try to remember them, because you young children, you don't need to know all that right now. Later on, when you grow up, we will again talk to you on all these things. But most important thing that Lord Krishna wants Arjuna to know is that, Arjuna, you must remember me all your life. Why? Why should you remember me constantly? Why should you remember God all the time? Because our Shastras, Shastra means what? Our scriptures. What are our scriptures? Vedas are our scriptures. What do Vedas say? They say that any person, when he dies, you know that every one of us have to die, isn't it? That's not a new thing. All of us now know, after studying 7 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, that all of us, the bodies which are born, the body dies. And at the time of death, we saw that, we already discussed that jiva inside us, it leaves the body and takes another body. Atma does not move anywhere. Atma stays constantly wherever it is. It is neither born nor does it die. We saw that in the 2nd chapter. And also I explained to you when I explained with electricity and the gadget example. Correct? But now what Krishna wants to say is, whenever any person dies, what is it that decides where the jiva should go, where the traveler jiva should go? Is it dependent on the person's desire or what? So Bhagwan says that whatever thought is there in the person at the time of death, that thought will take this person to his next life. Now, I'll tell you a nice story. There was one person, a story of Jada Bharata. Have you heard of Jada Bharata? Jada Bharata story kelidira? Okay. There was one big, very, very, very famous rishi. And this famous rishi was actually doing penance. Penance means, that day somebody asked me, Gandharva asked me, what is penance? Means he was doing tapas. He was doing tapas for what? To understand the real nature of Bhagwan. So he was sitting, contemplating and doing tapas. Many years he was doing tapas. What happened? Wherever he was doing the tapas, he found that there was a small deer kid. Deer means jinke. There was a jinke, there was a deer in that forest. And the deer gave birth to a small, deerlet, and that mother deer died. When the mother deer died, that baby was so small that this person, this rishi, he got that and brought up that small the deer. Okay? And then this rishi became so much attached to that deer. ಆ ಜಿಂಕೆ ಮರಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರೇಮ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತು ಅವನಿಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, he could not sit and meditate also properly. All the time he was thinking about that small jinke. Jinke means what? Deer. He was thinking of that small deer. All the time he was thinking of that deer. Then what happened? When he was about to die, then also his thoughts were not on God. His thoughts were on what will happen to my small deer now. After I go, who will take care of it? Who will look after it? So what happened? When Jada Bharata died, he was thinking of the deer, jinke. And it is said that such a big rishi, he became what? He was born as a deer in his next life, because he was thinking of the deer all the time. Okay? But then he knew that yes, whatever we think of when we die, it happens, we reach or we get the same thing. So what Bhagavan wants to tell us here in 8th chapter is, Arjuna, constantly think of me. Therefore, at the time of death also, you will be thinking of me only, correct? If we are thinking of God all the time, at the time of death also, we will think of God only. So, Bhagavan says that, Krishna says, at the time of death, if a person thinks of me, if a person's thoughts are on me, God, then he will reach me, he will come to me, he says. Okay? So what is the meaning of that? It means that at the time of death, can I suddenly think of God? It seems one person said who was having a big shop. Okay, he was a businessman, a big shop he had. He had 3-4 sons who were taking care of the shop. And he was sick for a long time. He was bedridden. Everybody told him, think of God, call God's name, utter God's name, do japa of God. You don't know when you are going to die. So think of God. Now, he said, don't worry. When I'm about to die, I will think of God. Now, first question is, how do we know which minute and how and when we are going to die? We don't know, isn't it? We can die anytime. We don't know when we are going to die. And when we are dying, will we be capable of bringing Bhagwan and thinking about him? No, it is not possible, correct? So what happened to that man when he was about to die? He was so worried about his shop. He saw all his sons standing next to him. He was so worried. What will happen to his business? What will happen to his shop? Suddenly he saw his 4 sons there and he said, hey, shop al yaro idira, ellaru ille bandbittidira, and he died. Do you understand? He told his sons, all of you are here. Who is there in the shop? Who is taking care of shop? Our shop, business shop, whatever. That means this person died thinking about his shop. So where is Bhagwan? So, number 1, we cannot think of God when we are about to die, number 1. Secondly, if at the time of death we have to think of God, then we should practice it all our lives. Correct? We have to practice all our lives. Otherwise, how will you think? Iga, supposing you are playing football match with somebody. Okay? Now, you are very good in football. But then what do you say? You don't practice. You say, Nodkolna, at the time of match, I will practice. At the time of match, I will do well. And you don't practice for 2 months, 3 months, you don't exercise, don't do anything. Suddenly you go and start playing the match. Can you play it properly? You can't. Correct? Even very good football players, very good athletes, all the time they are practicing. Okay? Why? They may play a game once in 1 year or once in 6 months. But what do? They are practicing all the time for that game. Correct? So, constant practice is something which will give you the capacity to perform very well. Correct? Now, when you are studying for the exam also, if you don't practice and previous day of the exam you start studying, will you be able to really write the exam? No. Correct? Practice. Practice has to be there. Therefore, Krishna says, number 1, what does he say in the 8th chapter? Very important. He says, please let me be in your thoughts when you die. Let God be in your thoughts when you die. Then you will come to me. You will reach me. Why? Because the last thought, at the time of death, whatever you are thinking, that thought only helps you to attain whatever you want. That thought only takes you wherever that thought can be fulfilled. Are you understanding, children? That is the second thing. Then third point, Lord Krishna says, if you want to think of me at the time of your death, you can't do it last minute. So what should you do? You should practice thinking about me, constantly remembering me all your life. Therefore, Arjuna, whatever you are doing, you do it in such a way that you think of me all the time. When you think of me all the time, then when the body dies also, the thought will be that of me only, and you will come to me. So there are 3 verses here. There are 3 shlokas here in the 8th chapter, where Bhagavan Krishna is talking about the thought at the time of death. What is the importance of thinking about Bhagavan at the time of death, and how you can think of God at the time of death? Now, there are 3 shlokas related to this. Those are what? The 5th shloka of the 8th chapter, the 6th shloka of the 8th chapter, and the 7th shloka. Number 5, number 6, and number 7 shlokas are talking about thinking of God at the time of death to reach or to understand God, to reach God. Okay, now let us see what it says. We'll go to the 5th shloka. 5th shloka of the 8th chapter. It says, anta-kāle cha mameva smaran muktvā kalevaram yah prayāti mad-bhāvaṁ yāti nāstyatra sanśhayaḥ. Okay, so what is the meaning of this? He says, anta-kāle. Anta-kāle means what? You know that. In Kannada also we say anta-kāladalli. Means what? At the time of death. Anta-kāle cha māmeva smaran. Māmeva smaran means what? Thinking of me, doing smaranam of me, meditating upon me. Muktvā kalevaram. Kalevaram andrenu body. When a person leaves his body at the time of death, at that time, anta-kāle, at the time of death, may one remember me constantly. What happens then? Yah prayāti mad-bhāvaṁ. He reaches me. When he thinks of me, he reaches me. If he thinks of America and dies, he will be born next life in America. If he thinks of a soldier or something at that age, he may be born as a soldier in his next life. He thinks of something which is very, very dear to him, very close to him, then he may be born as something associated with that in his next life. Therefore, human birth, being born as a human and reaching God is very, very important. Reaching God means what? Knowing God. What is God? Understanding this as our Vedas are telling. Therefore, hey Arjuna, constantly think of me. So he says that marana-kāle or anta-kāle, at the time of death, Arjuna, may you think of me. Why? When you think of me, after death, you will reach me. You means who? Not the body. We already have talked about it, no? That jiva which travels, it will reach me. That means what? He will reach a higher Loka. He will probably reach me in the sense what? I will be always with him. That means what? He will know me. He will understand me. And do you remember in the 6th chapter what Krishna told? Supposing a person cannot do dhyanam, supposing a person cannot meditate upon me, but he has tried his best to be a dhyana yogi. What happens? In his next life, I will see that he is born in a family where there is a possibility of knowing me. For that, what should you do? At the time of death also, you should be constantly thinking of Lord. So in the 5th verse, he said, if you think of me at the time of death, you will definitely reach me. Nāstyatra asti sanśhayaḥ. There is no samshaya there. There is no doubt there. See, Bhagwan Krishna is giving us a promise. He is telling us, be careful. See that at the time of death, you think of me. Why? Why should you think of me? Why not think of something else? You may ask that question. Why Krishna is telling us, we are still young. Yeah, right now you don't think of death and all that. But since Krishna has told this, I am telling you, you all have a long way to go. You are all going to live long and do excellent work in this society. But then you must understand it for the sake of what Lord Krishna is saying. That you are seeing people dying around you, correct? You have seen your own grandparents or your relatives going, correct? So you should know that everyone who is born is going to die one day. But how do we die? At the time of death, if we can think of and meditate upon God, then we reach God. Mad-bhāvaṁ yāti, nāstyatra sanśhayaḥ. There is no doubt. Don't think of anything else. Think of me. At least call my name. Hey Lord Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Okay? Something. That is why it seems, our people in our culture, in Hindus, we name our children in the name of God. Correct? Normally what happens when an old person dies? He calls out his children. Correct? He calls the names of his children. And what are the names that we give to our children? He'll be called, hey Govinda, hey Narayana, hey Rama, hey Lakshmana, come. That means what is he doing? He's calling out his children, but he's taking the name of God. Correct? So think and take my name. When you are leaving the body, then you will reach me. Why should I do that? You may ask. Then Krishna gives the answer in the 6th shloka of the 8th chapter. What does he say? Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvaṁ tyajatyante kalevaram tam evaiti kaunteya sadā tad-bhāva-bhāvitaḥ. What is the meaning of that? Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvaṁ. Whatever you think of at the time of death, whatever is the thought in your mind at the time of death, when the body is dying, the same thing you will attain. Supposing you are thinking of your business only, you will probably born in a businessman's family. You think of your pet, you think of some animal or something, you may be born in that particular genus of the animal. You are thinking of somebody else, somebody you are very fond of, you are thinking of that person, probably you will be born again in that person's family. Again, same cycle will go. Therefore, Lord Krishna is telling, see, whatever you think of when at the time of death, you will attain that. Like Jadabharata. I told you, Jadabharata story. He thought of that Jinke Mari. He thought constantly about that deer, that small deer. Okay, what happened? He was born as a deer. Immediately after that, within a few years or whatever, he was born as a deer. That means because he was so deeply thinking of the deer. Therefore, what Krishna says is, be careful about what your last thought is. That's why if your last thought has to be on me, what should you do? You should think of me all the time. Correct? So, be a karma yogi, offer all your actions to me. That means you are thinking of me. Correct? Whenever you get any result of any actions, accept it as my prasada. Then what are you doing? You are thinking of me. Correct? You meditate upon me, do japa on me. What are you doing? You are thinking of me. Whenever you see anything in this world, what are you trying to see? You are trying to see that I am the cause of this world. We saw where in the 7th chapter. I gave you an example, no? When you are touching this chain, what are you touching? You are touching gold. Where is gold in this chain? Everywhere. Wherever there is chain, there is gold. Why? Because gold is the cause of this chain. And what did Krishna say in the 7th chapter? I am the cause of this world. Therefore, I am everywhere in this world. Wherever you see, I am there. Whatever you touch, I am there. Wherever you are transacting, whatever you are doing in the world, I am there behind that. So there is not a single place where I am not in the world. Everywhere I am there. That's what he told. So at the time of doing your actions, what do? How do you practice thinking of God all the time? You have to practice. Without practice, nothing becomes spontaneous. Correct? If you want to play a game naturally, you have to practice. After practicing for long time, then it becomes a habit. Correct? Now I will tell you, you all know cycling. Correct? All of you cycle. Modlu cycle kalibekadre, what was happening to you? You could not think of anything else. No, you're holding like this tightly and without looking here and there, you are learning to ride the cycle. Correct? Initially, till you got the practice of riding the bicycle, you took so much of trouble. Alvapa, Sankal, huh? Didn't you? You were so scared to look here, there. All the time you are scared that you may lose balance and fall down. So when you learned to cycle, that is abhyasa. When you practiced for long time, what happened? Cycling became natural. Then what do? You put your friend behind on the carriage. One more friend is sitting in front of you on the bar. 2, 3 other people are cycling along with you. You are looking here, you are looking there, you are talking to your friends behind, and then cycling. Why? Cycling has become a spontaneous activity. You don't even have to think think about riding the cycle. Correct? When you learn to drive a scooter or a car, same thing happens. Initially, you're so scared. After once you have practiced it properly, then driving any vehicle becomes spontaneous. Similarly, Lord Krishna says here, to think of me at the end, you have to make it a practice. Correct? You have to practice, like you practice riding a cycle, like you practice swimming. Many of you must be swimming, alvapa? Many of you must be swimming. Modlu swimming kalibekadre ಏನಾಯ್ತು? You are scared of water, correct? You are scared where you will fall down. All the time you try to hold on to something else, correct? Huh? Till you got the practice, you are scared. You are not able to do it. Once you got the practice of swimming, what? You don't even think of swimming. Automatically you are swimming, correct? Like that only, God's name or thinking of God should become spontaneous. How spontaneous? Like riding a cycle, like swimming, okay, like walking, correct? You have seen small babies when they learn to walk. You have seen how they are very, very unstable. They fall. Now we are so adjusted and used to walking. Without looking where we are going, we are walking, talking to friends, walking without even thinking. Correct? Alvapa Vasu? We don't even think when we are walking. We are so used to it. So what Lord Krishna says is, thinking of me, taking my name should become a practice all your life. Like riding a cycle, like walking, like breathing, like eating. It should become effortless. Effort irbardu. First matra effort beku. Once it becomes a habit, then you don't need effort. Effortlessly you will cycle, isn't it? Now you're talking Kannada or you're talking English. Initially, when you learn a new language, it is very difficult, correct? But when you start practicing talking every day, then you will not even know how you are talking. Do you know, children, I did not know how to speak English till I was in 2nd PUC, because I studied in Kannada medium in my school. Okay? So when I went to PUC first year, that time English medium, I did not know how to speak English. I could not speak even 2 sentences of English properly. Every time only Kannada would come because I studied in Kannada medium. But then practice, I realized, oh, unless I practice, then I will never learn. Then practicing, then now I don't even think, I don't even have to worry. Automatically I'm able to speak. Practice. Correct? Now when I speak to you, I don't have to think, oh, you want to talk now? Swami has told me to talk to you all in English. How will I talk? I don't know. No, practice. Like that, what God is telling is, thinking of me, meditating upon me, taking my name, let it become a practice with you. Whatever you're doing, you think of me, that you're doing it for me. Then what happens? Meditating upon me, thinking about me becomes a habit, spontaneous, natural. So whatever you are doing, you are thinking of me. So at the time of death also, you don't have to make a specific effort. Automatically it will come. Another example I'll give you. Supposing in the night when you go to sleep, you are thinking of something very deeply when you are going to sleep, correct? And as you are thinking of that, you will fall asleep. Huh? Have you observed that the next morning when you get up, the same thought comes in your mind when you get up? Have you observed that? Do one thing. You try it today, tomorrow. You just say Om Sai Ram, Sai Ram and sleep. And if you fall asleep when you're saying Sai Ram, in the morning you will get up with that only. That thought will be the first thought in your mind. Yes, it is true. That is why it is said that while going to sleep also, do God's think, take God's name. Japa marta malkontare. Yake? Many people die in sleep, isn't it? Have you seen that? Many people die in sleep. Then At the time of going to sleep also, if you're doing japa and sleeping, you see next morning when you get up, that japa will be there in your mind. It will keep repeating. Spontaneously it happens. But you have to practice it. It will not happen in one day. You have to practice it. So what did Krishna say now here? He says in the 7th verse, in the 7th shloka of 8th chapter, what did he say? Tasmāt sarveṣhu kāleṣhu anusmara yudhya cha mayyarpita-mano-buddhir evaishyasyasanśhayam. Hey Arjuna, therefore, sarveṣhu kāleṣhu anusmara. All the time you think of me, and yudhya cha. Fight this war. Do your swadharma. I have talked about it, isn't it? Sham and Nihar, swadharma, swakarma. Do what you have to do. Do your swadharma. Do your swakarma. How? Thinking of me all the time. And if you think of me all the time, whatever you are doing, then all the time your mind subconsciously will be thinking of me. And at the time of death also, a person will be thinking of me. Therefore, sarveṣhu kāleṣhu, all the time, anusmara. Krishna is telling, think of me, okay? Meditate upon me. And yudhya cha, fight also. He is not telling Arjuna to sit, close your eyes and meditate. What is he telling? Think of me and fight. How do you think of me when you fight? This fighting is my swadharma. I am offering this to Bhagwan. I am offering this to Lord Krishna. Then what happens? Such a person, mameva yeshyasi. When you do this, Arjuna, constantly you will be thinking of me. And what happens? Ultimately, you will reach me. Okay? So as I told you, the 8th chapter has many other things also. The 8th chapter has many other topics. The 8th chapter talks about what? What is Brahma? What is Omkara? How to do Omkara Upasana? What are various terms which are explained in so many things it talks about. It also talks about how a yogi leaves his prana, or that also he talks about. Okay, how a yogi at the time of death, how he lives. Where does this jiva go after death? How it goes, where it goes, all that he is talking about here in 8th chapter. But right now, for us, it is not important. What is important for us? After the 7th chapter, it is important for us to understand that we have to remember Bhagwan. We have to remember God all the time, whatever we are doing. So Krishna says, Mameva anusmara yudhya. Fight your war, Arjuna. That is your duty. Do your duty. Fight this war as a swadharma. But remember me. Remember me as what? Remember me as me you offer that work that you are doing. Whatever may be the result of the war, you take it. You accept it as my prasada. This will give you the practice of remembering me all the time. And when you remember me all the time, you will remember me at the time of death also. And if you remember me and leave your body, where do you go? You come to me only. Why? Because the last thought in your mind, when you sleep, the last thought in your mind is the thought you wake up with, as I told you just now. When you die, the last thought that is there in your mind when a person dies, in that place only the person will get up in the next body. Okay, so in 8th chapter, I have discussed only one small part, very important for us, that we have to start practicing thinking of God. We have to start meditating upon God all the time, constantly. Okay, so this is the very small summary of the 8th chapter. Okay, there are so many, as I told you. You may ask me, There are so many other things in the 8th chapter. In your notes only, you have given so many things, Amma. Why you didn't talk about that? Because you are all still very, very young and you may not be able to understand what all those things are. I don't want to confuse you. I only want you to remember that you should think of Lord all the time. And don't worry about death also. Okay? Think that when you think of God, when you are sleeping in the night, you will get up thinking of the same thought will be in your mind when you get it. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.